Hello everyone and welcome to the Eye of Azshara Mythic Dungeon Guide. As always with the trash, point them away from everyone, disrupt what you need to, and get your heals off. Boss number 1. Now, like normal mode, he does spawn adds, but this time he spawns 2 of them at once. One of them is a healer and one of them is a DPSer. You'll see here, I try to taunt the healer over. I need to go interrupt that. And then you'll see me pick up the melee DPSer right after 2. Make sure you do pick up both of them. The healer is more important, and you do need to keep her interrupted. The next thing that you see here is that arrow on the ground. That is a spear. The good thing here is that the spear can hit the adds. So if you're good with kiting, you can most definitely kite the add in front of the spear. My suggestion is to DPS the healer down, interrupt her, and then put the melee DPSer in front of the spear to have him die that way. Another move you just saw right now is the crashing wave that he does. You will see him cast it. When he does do this, he rushes forward. Just make sure that you face him away from the group, even though you have to kite and pick up adds. Face him away from the group so that that wave does not hit anyone else. You do see here on the ground behind him all of the quicksand. That's part of the wave, so when he does do his wave, that is something you don't want to stand in. Now if there's a healer, that takes a little bit of priority. Try to interrupt the healer out of it. But that's basically it for the mechanics for this boss. Pick up the adds, face him away from the group, try to spear down the adds and keep them interrupted, and don't stand in the quicksand. Boss number 2. Much like last time, with the static Nova stand on land, with the focus lightning stand on water, and pick up all of the adds. Something else that has changed between normal and mythic is people will get Curse of the Witch on them. Now what this curse does is when it's cleansed or when it expires, the person expels a giant wave of arcane energy coming in front of them. It does no damage, but it does knock people off. So if you do need to stand on land or stand in water, it could knock you to the wrong portion of it. So be careful when you have this curse on you. You do see here that I do get knocked over, but I do get knocked over to another area of land, so it's perfectly fine. Now these globules, what happens with them when they die, they do snare you in a small little AoE around them. So if you do need to be wary of your position, be careful of how and when you kill them. You might want to kite them. In the back, you do also start seeing these tornadoes or monsoons. You do want to kite those around. Basically, they just chase the closest person to them. They will destroy any land they come in contact with, so be careful not to destroy all the land around you when you're kiting them around. The third boss. The big difference here between normal mode and mythic is the type of spawns that he makes. Now to go over the mechanics, avoid standing in the poison on the ground. There is a vortex that happens beforehand. And if you are affected by toxic wound, you do drop puddles of poison on the ground as well. So it's useful to kite those away from the boss as opposed to around the boss, since they persist for the whole fight. So be careful how you kite those. In this phase, when he submerges, he does spawn an arcane blue serpent and the regular red serpent. Now, since this was our first time doing Mythic, we went ahead and DPS the arcane serpent down, but there's no need for that. You can actually prioritize the blazing serpent first because it does do more damage than the arcane one. And another thing to note, as a tank, you should run straight for the boss every single time so that he doesn't rampage. My group was a little bit short on DPS, which is why I ran with them. However, rampage does do a lot of damage, and if your healer can't handle it, people will die during this phase. So as a tank, run to the boss. As DPS, DPS the blazing and then the arcane one. And that's really it for this boss. The next boss does have a couple of changes between normal and mythic, notably that the cracked ground does persist on the ground, so you do want to try to avoid that. So basically with this boss, stay away from everyone else, stay within 5 yards from everyone else, and avoid this ground slam. It is a giant AoE on the ground, you can see it pretty clearly. Something else he does do to non-tank targets is he puts them in a bubble. Now, if this bubble expires, 60% of that person's HP gets dealt as damage across everyone. So if you have the bubble, run into damage on purpose. That means take quake damage, take the torrent damage, whatever it is that you need to do. Make sure that that bubble runs out on you, or you will do big damage to the whole party. You do also want to avoid the torrents that come out and start appearing on the ground. The other thing to note is you do see the cracked ground underneath me. Every time there's a quake, there will be an aftershock in these areas. You do see here I do take high damage. Basically, you want to avoid any cracked ground, which makes the fight a little bit harder because you do have to use the whole platform that he's on. However, it is a big platform, so you can run around in circles and avoid a lot of this damage. You do see that at the time of recording this, I was not aware of the aftershocks that happen from the quake, so I do take a lot of damage from this cracked ground, but you should try to avoid it. Now, if you do have the gaseous bubbles on you, you can actually run into this cracked ground on purpose to take that damage to pop the bubble easier. Chasing torrents might lower your DPS or might result in lack of healing. Unfortunately, here with my party, you do see someone has disconnected, and I am taking still very high damage. We do manage to take this boss down on the first try, but you should try to avoid all of this damage that I end up taking. The last boss, you basically just need to avoid everything, and I do mean everything because there's a lot of things. There's little tornadoes, there's crashing waves. If you need to take damage from something, the waves are the least amount of damage as opposed to the tornadoes. The other thing he does do is he does put an arcane bomb on someone. Now after a certain time with this bomb, you do see that it stays in one place and it starts to drop down. So what you want to do is kite that away from the boss and away from the group and have that explode somewhere else. The biggest other mechanic that he does have is Crushing Depths, which he does cast on a non-tank target. And basically what this is it deals massive damage spread out between all of the targets in that area. So all of the DPS and all of the healers should run together and absorb that damage. The tank should never have to run out and absorb that damage because there's enough damage going out to the tank. So just something to note for all of the DPS. You don't see me doing it just because I don't want to be taking that damage on top of the regular tanking damage. A very good strategy to keep in mind is for the group to start the fight in one area of the boss. Now once all these environmental effects keep happening, everyone should start rotating slowly to start avoiding the tornadoes that stay on the ground and all of the other environmental effects that do happen. So as a group, try to be a little more coordinated. This is a random pug, so it's a little bit more difficult, but try to rotate together around the boss to start avoiding all of this damage that he does throw out. Something else to note, the environmental effects on Mythic mode do provide a debuff that lasts the entire fight, so the more you get hit by them, the more they'll end up doing and the harder it is for you to stay alive. So try to avoid all of the environmental damage. I know it's a little difficult with the winds throwing you around everywhere. That really does it for this Mythic dungeon. I hope you guys enjoyed this guide, and good luck out there.